what does the actual, so molecular hydrogen, once it, we've got the right product now, we've got the right, concentration in the solution, we've got it down us. What does it actually do in the body?
All right, so this is interesting, and there's a few things that it likely does that evidence is emerging. Now, first, we need to understand that hydrogen has been with us since the very beginning.
Yeah.
Mitochondria actually evolved from a hydrogen-dependent, organelle that became our first eukaryotes.
Yep.
Right. And then after that, they were expelling hydrogen gas. And now we look at our microbiome, and much of the bacteria in our body is either expelling hydrogen or consuming hydrogen. Right? And there's just hydrogen in our body.
Just studying microbiome. Yeah, I know that one.
So we used to think that hydrogen in our body was completely inert, but why would the first molecule that existed in the universe that has been with us since the very beginning have no role to play? That doesn't make sense. And now research is coming out showing that a large percentage of people are no longer producing hydrogen gas through carbohydrate fermentation, right? Because of disrupted microbiomes. And this is becoming a bigger and bigger field in microbiome research. So a large percentage of people, especially overweight or obese people, research is coming out showing that they're not producing H2 by breaking down carbohydrates, they're producing methane instead. So,
which, like that's a side of SIBO too, isn't it? Like,
but this is important because hydrogen is now shown to play a couple roles within the body. One role, and there's a lot of hydrogen research on molecular hydrogen and liver health, is hydrogen seems to play a key role in maintaining liver homeostasis, right? And a percentage of the hydrogen we consume is metabolized in the liver, right? And promotes healthy liver function. The second thing that hydrogen does is it acts as something called a mitohormetic stressor. Right? So you can think of that as exercise for your mitochondria.
Yep.
So hydrogen gets into our cells, it elevates the H2 in our cells, it stresses out our mitochondria, just like exercising stresses out your muscles.
Yep.
And then the peak goes down and our mitochondria becomes stronger. It improves their function, it causes something called mitochondrial biogenesis, so more mitochondria is made, and now with more energy available inside our cells, a lot of corrections happen. So the interesting thing with hydrogen is it only works when something is dysregulated. So if you put hydrogen on a completely healthy cell tissue where everything is perfect, no changes occur. Now you artificially damage that same healthy cell, and then you add the hydrogen medium, and you see all of these changes start occurring. Or if you put the healthy cell in a hydrogen medium and then you try and damage, you see strong protective effect.
Wow. So it's modulating rather than, so it's modulating rather than pushing it in one direction or another direction.
Yeah, exactly. Like say for most people think of hydrogen as an anti-inflammatory or antioxidant, which is untrue because usually it acts as an antioxidant or an anti-inflammatory, but not always. Right? There's models where hydrogen has increased oxidative stress for a benefit, right? Because what matters isn't the amount of antioxidants you have. We can have something called reductive stress. When there's too much antioxidants and not enough oxidative stress. Hydrogen regulates the redox status within the cell. So kind of the harmony between the oxidative stress and the antioxidants. So it regulates beneficial oxidative stressors and nitrosative stressors as well, like nitric oxide, as well as regulating antioxidant production via our NERV2 pathway. So hydrogen will regulate our production of glutathione, superoxide dismutase, and catalase. Also play a role in regulation of like H2O2, nitric oxide, some of these stressors. Likewise, hydrogen kind of increases inflammation in its myokine role, just like exercise does. When you exercise, it slightly bumps up your inflammation. Then your anti-inflammatory cytokines reverse that, and you have a net anti-inflammatory effect. Hydrogen seems to do the same thing. This is particularly important with athletes because often athletes, especially if you're trying to build muscle are advised not to take any antioxidants or
Antioxidant.
anti-inflammatories because they will basically stop the gains you make from
Exactly.
exercise.
Yeah, you
Because you
stop the
want
signaling.
exactly, you want the acute stressors along with exercise, which causes a rebound to strengthen at a healthier level. There's been some cool research on hydrogen in rodents where they'll have a control group doing forced swims and a hydrogen group doing forced swims. And they analyze and the acute stress that happens immediately after and during exercise is higher in the hydrogen group. So it's as if they worked higher, but they rebound to homeostasis faster. So it's like they worked out harder and recovered quicker. Right. So hydrogen has potentiated the effects of exercise in that way.
So for athletes, this would mean that you could train harder and get better effects. So like you not hit the overtraining problem that we otherwise hit.
That's what the research indicates. Both preclinical and clinical research. There's a strong anti-fatigue effect. A systematic review and meta-analysis just found hydrogen and fatigue, like reduced fatigue greatly. There's been a number of studies found with athletes after competitions, multiple day of intensive exercise, stuff like that hydrogen improves a redox status, once recovery starts setting in. So there is evidence for both of these, and anecdotally from a lot of the professional and amateur athletes that use the tablets, they're finding that too, that doesn't really help them day one, day two, maybe by the end of a week of training, they start seeing a fatigue reduction and they start feeling less sore.
Wow.
Right. One of our trials using the hydrogen tablets topically found a significant reduction in delayed onset muscle soreness, right? And also it protected against the rise in creatine kinase, so protected against muscle damage. For say like distance athletes, like runners and athletes, we've tested in some various like running groups inside, and it's been interesting. The distance athletes that basically start fast and try and hold pace end up setting PRs because they hold their pace for longer. But the athletes that say know the exact pace they want to run and go in running that pace don't really see a benefit because they're not pushing their body harder. So hydrogen seems to help for the people who, say want to start at a 4:30 pace and think that they're going to end at a 5:30 pace and just try and hold the faster pace as long as they can. That type of athlete seems to PR quite often.
Wow. Okay. Sure. And this is like in the background behind me there, you'll see a hyperbaric oxygen, mild hyperbaric, and I've got a hyperbaric clinic here with a hard shell as well. But this is part of the oxidative medicine family. So you've got vitamin C, you've got UVBI, ultraviolet blood irradiation, you've got intravenous vitamin C, and molecular hydrogen, which sound to me like, just as a lay person putting two and two together, this would be part of that oxidative family, because they all to do with, hydrogen and oxygen and that redox. They're playing that redox, that backwards and forwards of trying to get that, signaling right. And is it oxidative stress? You hop in there, you have to have a body that can respond to the stressor. If you're like too far, too weak, and you won't respond. But it's with the hyperbaric, it's flooding the body with oxygen, and what you're doing is sort of flooding the body with molecular hydrogen, and getting that hormesis thing going.
Yeah. So it's working, in some ways as a mitohormetic stressor, but really, I like to call hydrogen like a master supervisor or regulator, right? Because it plays a lot of different roles in the body. For instance, something that exercise does too, but is really big in the anti-aging and biohacking world is autophagy.
Oh yeah,
right? Kind of
hydrogen.
Hydrogen usually activates autophagy, but not always. Right? Most models that I've seen is hydrogen stimulates autophagy, but in a few key models, such as after, oxygen deprivation from drowning, after heart failure, where you absolutely don't want autophagy, hydrogen has inhibited and stopped autophagy, right?
Wow.
So it plays sort of this master role.
Mm.
And again, it really shows, like in our research, I think we have like 13 clinical trials now that are either published or going through peer review right now. And I'd say works for people who are overweight, right? In 3 of our clinical trials where people were overweight and improved body composition, they lost weight, usually, a pound or 2 a month on average. It improves lipid profiles,
Wow.
right? So cholesterol and triglycerides, fasting blood sugar. It's greatly improved brain metabolism in a few different models. So the hydrogen tablets have improved brain metabolism after sleep deprivation, actually more robustly than caffeine, in an elderly trial of people 70 plus, and in an obese model,
Wow.
right? So people were otherwise healthy but overweight. All ages, I think 18 to 60 was the age range of that one that's under peer review right now. But again, for say the healthy aging and this anti-aging trial, to lengthen telomeres, improve DNA methylation.
Wow.
It doubled this marker in the blood called TET2. Now, TET2 is linked to young blood. If you guys, if
Yep.
listeners have ever seen the vampire research where they
Yep.
take the blood of a young mouse and put it in an old mouse and it rejuvenates them, that's highly linked to TET2. So hydrogen doubled that in the blood. It improves some, other functional parameters. Like can improve their like life quality scores, like lowering pain score. It improves some sleep parameters. And this one's really big. It improves some parameters of the senior fitness test. So at the
Wow.
end of the trial, at the end of the 6 months, the seniors that were on the hydrogen were actually stronger, right? So it didn't just protect the decline, they got stronger. And this was really important because this trial was recruited during the early days of the pandemic.
Gosh, yeah,
So
when everything would have been going pear-shaped.
exactly, right? So um, this was done in Europe, so the gyms were closed, the
Yeah.
seniors were basically on house arrest, right?
Yeah.
But they still, in things like how many times they could sit on a chair and stand, at
Yeah.
the end of the 6 months on the hydrogen group, they were stronger.
Wow. So what you just said in that mouthful with the DNA methylation and the mitochondrial effects and the improved, it's just like, wow, this seems to be like something that isn't just pushing one pathway, which a lot of, supplements and things, I'm a fan of cycling things because we don't want to
Yeah,
just push on one pathway all the time. If I just give you, even with like one of my major supplements that I have is NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. Even with that great thing that, you're going to increase your pool of NAD in the cell and so on and so forth, I still like people to cycle in and out of it, a good 12 weeks and then have a little break and then more, because you just don't want to push on one pathway all the time. And then there are a few molecules in the world that seem to just modulate everything. So they're not pushing on one way or the other. They're basically going, making everything balance again, which is getting that homeostasis.
yeah.
So these sort of molecules I like to sort of double down on and really study that and find why is this one, should we be on this, all of us, so have you had any trials in brain injury or neurodegeneration, stroke, anything like that?
Yeah, they're again, I don't want to talk about this too much
Yeah,
because we're getting into some like heavy disease claims on that.
yeah, you gotta be
Uh,
careful. Yeah.
like there was one rat study that was done on tablets that was on post-stroke recovery. It was a
Yep.
combo therapy between hydrogen and minocycline, and they found some synergy there. There's quite a bit of early research on hydrogen and various neurodegenerative um, issues, but a lot more research does need to be done.
Yeah, for sure.
Where the best evidence is lying so far with hydrogen, where systematic reviews and meta-analyses have been done showing that you're seeing these effects across all studies, not one study where it works, one where it doesn't. You can't get to the bottom of things. Is hydrogen seems to have a strong anti-fatigue effect, and it seems to improve lipid profiles.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
That's what we know for sure after systematic review and meta-analysis. There was another systematic review and meta-analysis that hydrogen had some potent anti-cancer benefits. We have a rodent trial on the tablets with that, but I really want to caution because those researchers included all the rodent research, right, in their systematic review and meta-analysis, whereas
not
the
human trials.
anti-fatigue, the lipid were just human trials.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of areas where hydrogen has been as quite interesting emerging research where it could potentially be beneficial. We know it's beneficial for anti-fatigue and for lipids, right? After systematic reviews and meta-analysis.
If it's improving like the mitochondria and causing mitochondrial biogenesis, then that's at the base of so much. And this is where it becomes exciting, right? Because
that's why the research is all over the place.
Yeah,
right?
because it would hit so many markets there, so many problems.
There's over 2,000 original studies on hydrogen, looking at something like 180 different, models, like disease models across every organ in the body. Now, most of the research is still too early evidence to say definitively it does this. Almost the majority of the research is positive. Like I think in about 140 clinical trials on hydrogen, it's worked in 135 of them.
Wow.
Right. So it's overwhelmingly positive. But again, most of these studies are smaller. What would for pharmaceuticals be like phase 1, phase 2? There hasn't been multiple replicated phase 3 trials to show definitively it works for these models. So it's still just it's very promising, but the way in which hydrogen works, we know is going to have a lot of applications. But the way it works means that it might do something different for person X and person Y. Like you're going to see different changes from hydrogen in young athletes as compared to elderly people. Hydrogen works not by the total amount you're getting per day, but by spiking the concentration in the cell, right? So, for instance, with the hydrogen tablets or any hydrogen therapy product, you don't want to take it all day long. The research has shown that acute intermittent pulsing of hydrogen has an effect, but continuous exposure does not. So when they say put a cell culture or like rodents in an atmosphere that just has hydrogen around the clock all the time, we're not seeing those positive effects, because just like exercise, it's the peak and then the valley that we want. It's the stress and the recovery.
Yeah. And it makes sense. My brain goes to my simplistic brain goes to, wonder what molecular hydrogen plus hyperbaric oxygen therapy would do.
There's one human study in that. I forget what model. Yeah, I forget what they were looking at, but I know they used H2 plus H-bot in one model for a positive result, but I don't think they used either on its own.
I'll have to go and have a look.
Yeah, I can dig it up and find it, email it to you. But like a good trial, I think they would have had a control group, hydrogen group, an H-bot group, and a H2 plus H-bot group. But I think they just had a control and an H-bot plus H2. So we don't know if it was synergistic or anything like that.
Which one it was.
Exactly, right?
Just mechanistically, it would mechanistically thinking, that might be a winner.
Yeah, it could be.
All right, Alex. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and really appreciate all your research and science.
No problem. Thanks for having me.